Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Pangolin Advisor and I'm going to tell you how to play as the Umbral Choir. I'll show you what tools they have at their disposal, how you can use those tools to gain advantage in your games and win those games, and how to cope with any problems the Umbral Choir may have. I'll also tell you just how they play in general and show you the many paths you can take when playing as this incredibly versatile faction, not action, although they can take versatile action as well. Word of warning, however, this video assumes that you know what hacking and cloaking is all about, not in the context of Umbral Choir themselves, but in general. If you do not know all of the intricacies of hacking, for instance, I encourage you strongly to watch my previous video on this subject. It will be on the same playlist as this one, so it should be easy for you to find. But without further ado, let us talk a little bit about the Umbral Choir. And let's start by having a quick look at what exactly it is they have.
We are not monsters. We are the Umbral Choir.
Yes, they're very gentle teddy bears that just happen to be ghost entities, and honestly, I'll tell you something right away. I am a known warmonger amongst online community. I love warmongering, I'm very good at it as well. I tend to turn even the most pacifistic factions such as the roving clans in Endless Legend into bloodthirsty maniacs. But the Umbral Choir is so far the first faction that Amplitude Studios created that actually compels me to play as a pacifist to a certain degree. I'm still a bit warmongery as them, but they are truly the nicest faction out there despite their looks. So let me introduce to you their affinity and traits real quick. So their faction affinity is in the shadows. They're ghosts. They only have one system and they will only ever have one truly productive home system. They will never have other systems that can also produce things such as ships or improvements. Although they can have sanctuaries, but we'll talk about them later. So if you can see a comparison between them and the cultists in Endless Legend, well, you would be quite right. Moreover, the Umbral Choir also are immune to influence conversion, and they can also create sleeper agents and abduct sleeper agents to create some kind of superpopulation, which is basically like the regular Umbral Choir population, except it has double the FIDSI income of your regular population, so you can abduct people and turn them into super ghosts of sorts. Next up, you also, well, like I said, cannot colonize systems, but you can instead create sanctuaries, which just are a place where your ghosts can live on, but they won't do much else aside from siphoning FIDSI into your main system, the only system that actually matters. So that's super important. So you're playing as this kind of invisible faction because you are ghosts. All of your ships, aside from obliterators and juggernauts, can be cloaked. So again, if I were to draw a comparison to Endless Legend one more time, you're like a mix between the cultists and the Forgotten, because you're very stealthy and you can only ever have one city. Moreover, your home system can be teleported to other areas as well, which is pretty cool. If we look at their other faction traits, they have immaterial population, meaning that, well, if you try to conquer enemy systems, you will have a very hard time doing so. Moreover, the amount of military you can field effectively is also going to be, well, not limited by this fact, but your military will be far weaker at either defending your systems from being taken over, that being your main system, the only system that matters, or at conquering enemy systems. That's going to take quite a bit of work, but you'll be able to hack your way through those problems, I'm sure. Next up, we've got Dark Matter Manipulators, just giving you some extra bandwidth to work with. This is going to be very useful for reasons that I'll show you later. You can also have more hacking operations going at any given time. This is crucial because hacking is how you expand as the Umbral Choir. You have the Fledgling Traders trait, which is actually, I mean, if not for this trait, this faction would be probably the best trader faction in the game, including the Lumeris, because you just create subsidiaries automatically on all of your expanded systems, including the sanctuaries. So you can have just a humongous trading network without ever having to create it, really. You just have to make one structure as opposed to several, and then you just max out on subsidiaries just like that as soon as possible. Two infiltrators, even more hacking speed, which is excellent. Ghosts I mentioned. Exploited sleepers, just increase the power of sleeper agents so that they actually do something for you. You start with titanium and hyperium. it costs a lot of you for you to actually improve your system level, which makes sense since you only have one system ever. And you start with 2 technologies as well, which is quite nice. You are a democracy. Some people don't like this thing because democracy doesn't really give you much in the way of controlling what your population votes for, and this is especially true for Umbral Choir since they only ever get one system. So the system will be quite heavily biased, of course, and there is little you can do to manipulate it unless you change the government type. I don't mind democracy. Oftentimes I find having a lot of laws active from several different party members is very useful, especially for this faction, because it is a very generalist type of faction that is a jack of all trades, master of none, and you can go pursue any victory condition you really want. So for that reason democracy is quite good, although if you do want to switch, then in my opinion both Federation and Republic aren't that bad, but I would strongly suggest going for Republic. Democracy, however, as I said, is still quite good in its own right, and I see no reason not to stay playing as a democracy. You start on Nexus, and your faction is primarily made out of pacifists, and it will be very difficult for you to get pacifists out of the government. So if you don't like them, and I can understand that, then indeed it's probably for the best that you change your government type, but it is by no means necessary. Without further ado now, let's jump into a game and show you more about this wonderful faction. Now that we are in-game and can listen to the beautiful soundtrack of the Umbral Choir, we can talk a little bit about what victory types you can go for, because this is, as you might imagine, quite important. So let's go ahead and have a quick look at all of the available victories for you. First of all, we've got the Supremacy victory, which requires you to control the home systems of all the major factions that spawned in the game. How achievable is that as the Umbral Choir? You have several options of going for this. For instance, you can employ the traditional obliterator tactic, which, by the way, now there's an option in game to turn off obliterators, which I appreciate there being there, but I'll never turn off such fun little toys as obliterators. Regardless, if you do have them enabled, you can of course sneak cloaked behemoths near your enemy systems and utilize some of your maybe nearby sanctuaries to turn those behemoths into obliterators and then quickly fire the obliterators at the enemy. The downside of this idea, however, is that you'll probably need quite a few behemoths that are not military behemoths but rather are different types of behemoths to pursue your other goals and to assimilate and amass enough quadrinics and orichalcics for this goal. So I don't believe this to be a particularly viable strategy. You can of course employ a different strategy and just force the enemy out of their home systems or just hack your way through them slowly and steadily, but this would take quite a long time, and for that reason I don't believe the Umbral Choir are particularly well suited for Supremacy victory, although by no means it is unachievable for them. As I said, Umbral Choir is very good at letting you choose any playstyle you want, and if you want to pursue a particular goal, go for it, you can do it, trust me. Next up we've got the Conquest victory, which is seemingly very easy actually. I already, as you can see in this particular game, am well on my way on getting the Conquest victory. I already was given the imminent victory warning, and every other player was as well. And it's fairly easy, especially on smaller galaxies, because of the humongous amount of hacking you can do simultaneously. And every sanctuary you create, which I'll show you how to do that in a second, every sanctuary that you create will get you one step closer to winning this victory type. The issue is that it is at the very least relatively easy for your enemies to get rid of your sanctuaries. And once you have a very expansive network of sanctuaries rather, the enemies will start cleansing them, and I believe that while it is seemingly easy to go for Conquest victory, if you have either smart opponents or if you play on a very large galaxy, it might be a little bit on the tough side. Next up we've got the Science victory, which I believe the Umbral Choir to be quite well suited for. Your nation does like to have a lot of science, your population also generates a good amount of science, they have a natural bias towards scientific investments. Moreover, because you are a master hacker, it should be relatively easy for you to steal all the essential technologies from your rival empires. All of this included, I believe that the Science victory is relatively easy, although not the easiest one for the Umbral Choir to achieve perhaps. Next up we've got the Economic victory, which I am the weakest at gaining ever in any game, because I just don't like the playstyle of turtling and gaining more money. That being said, the Umbral Choir have a real shot of this, because the trading is very powerful. As you can see right now in this game, this is my trading network. It spans almost the entire galaxy without any effort. I just had to make one structure, and that was the trading company HQ. I never had to make anything beyond that, and as you can see, I can trade with half of the galaxy, which ultimately doesn't actually give me all that many resources, despite having some primarily investments into my cargo ships, although I could of course always invest more. With that being said, you also have the ability to siphon resources out of your enemies, which is a decent source of economy, but nonetheless I don't believe that economy is again the most obvious victory and the easiest victory for you to achieve. Finally, you have the Wonder Victory. And Wonder Victory is surprisingly probably the easiest one to achieve for the Umbral Choir. Of course, creating a Wonder structure requires a considerable undertaking, and it requires for you to have a stockpile of every single strategic resource in the galaxy. But not only is a single obelisk of space, of all space-time, incredibly powerful boost to your home system, and keep in mind you only have one home system, so this single obelisk is essentially boosting your entire empire, making it way more efficient than it is for other empires to create obelisks of all space-time. The downside of the going for Wonder Victory is that you can only work on one obelisk at a time. You cannot queue them all up. You can only queue up a second obelisk after you create your first one, and you can only queue up your third obelisk after you create your second one, and so on and so forth. Nonetheless, it is not that difficult for the Umbral Choir to acquire all of the necessary ingredients for this. For instance, you can employ stealthed behemoth ships. Right now I have a stealth behemoth ship orbiting this nebula cloud, which is giving me quadrinics every turn, and nobody even knows that I'm gaining quadrinics from this guy. As soon as I get the research for it, not this one but the other research, I'll be able to also get orichalcics in the same way. If you need antimatter or adamantium, you can create more behemoth ships that can mine things from different sources that will give you everything that you need to have at any given point in time. This is tremendously useful, and this is why, as the Umbral Choir, in my opinion, having stealth behemoths is a key to your success. Let's go back to the Wonder Victory for one more moment, shall we? Because I want to say that in case you're not a big fan of a Wonder Victory, which I believe is the most natural victory for the Umbral Choir, what is then your plan B? Well, I believe that your plan B is going for Science Victory, as it is the second easiest for the Umbral Choir, and then plan C would probably be, actually, the Supremacy Victory. You can launch surprise assaults on the enemy home systems, and if you do that, thanks to your invisible fleets, you can actually make sure that nobody but you controls the home system relatively easily. So then the trick will be, of course, owning those home systems, but again, this shouldn't be all that difficult, because with your particular invasion tactic, which I'll show to you right now through the power of magic. If you look at the screen right now, you should be able to see the fact that this is what happens once you conquer a system with an actual military invasion. As you can see, you have three options. You can raise the system as usual, you can abduct people, which would give you Umbral Shadows, that's your superpopulation, which I'll talk a bit more in a second. And finally, you can purge the system, which, as you can see, will raise everything on the system and will create sanctuaries. So this is a very easy way of expanding onto enemy home systems. So again, Conquest Victory, not as difficult as I made it seem originally. With that said, let's have a quick look-see at all of the Umbral Choir mechanics. And I realize I maybe should have mentioned the mechanics before I mentioned the victory types, but I believe the victory type knowledge to be an essential part of the guide, and I just wanted to say it out fast. So, when it comes to the Umbral Choir specific mechanics, what can they do that other empires can't? How do they work? First of all, if you want to expand, then you don't do this in the same way that other empires do. You don't create a colony ship or do whatever. Instead, you go into your hacking screen, and then what you have to do, well, is simply I'll have to cancel something real quick. So I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can cancel something real. Actually, instead I'll just end my turn. You can see that I currently have a sanctuary on Deki. It looks like this. I cannot do anything on the sanctuary, but I do have my population over on the sanctuary. And the trick to growing your population on sanctuaries is maximizing the amount of population you have on your home system. Your home system is the first system that grows thanks to your food, But once your home system is maxed out on population, then every single sanctuary you have will start growing as well. The priority is given to your smallest sanctuaries. So if I were to grow another population on one of those two sanctuaries, then this sanctuary would grow a new population first before this sanctuary grows a new population. That's how it works. As you can see, this sanctuary cannot do anything by its own, but what it does do is it supplies extra resources to my home system. If you have a quick look at where my humongous gains are coming from, you can see that most of them are actually coming from sanctuaries. So by just having your population on another system, you can increase the production of anything on your home system. And your home system is the place where you actually make all the important things, such as trade clearing bureau or any other improvement or ship in the game, which is quite essential and important, of course. So this is the first mechanic. How do you create new sanctuaries? It's quite easy, you just have to hack. So you choose your point at the destination as always and hack an uninhabited system. Umbral Choir can hack empty systems, which I know logically speaking doesn't make much sense, since how do you hack something that, I mean, there's nothing to hack there. Umbral Studios did not provide us with an explanation. The way I see it working is that you basically hack the dust that is just dormant on the system. And either way, no matter how it works, after a certain amount of time passes, depending on how long the route is between your origin point and the system you want to colonize, then the system will have its first sanctuary on it. Next up, once you have a colony on it, a single sanctuary, you can then create more sanctuaries by hacking the system again. You cannot, as you can see, create new sanctuaries just by clicking on some tiny little button. No, instead you have to hack the system again. So if I wanted a second sanctuary on Danib, I would have to hack it by, for instance, hacking it from Ceres or from Korana or somewhere else. So this is quite important for you to know. Now, next up, I mentioned the Uber population, and I'll show you this population right away. So if you want to look at my system right now, I only have the Umbral Choir population. But if I were to abduct a sleeper, that would change quite considerably, and I would gain a sleeper population. How do you abduct a sleeper? Well, it's quite easy and simple to do and simple to show you. So as you can see, there's an option to abduct a sleeper. And this option appears only once you actually have a sleeper on a system that you can abduct sleepers from. So first you have to create sleepers on a system, and then you will be able to abduct them. This is also why it is very good to create sanctuaries on systems that you know your enemy will expand to. As you can see, this is a system where I created my sanctuary first. Then an enemy expanded to this system, and through this I was able to create sleepers very easily. I just had to press this button and it created a new sleeper. I lost one of my population that is dormant on the sanctuary, but one more of the enemy's populations became an agent of mine. Now if I were to hack this system, I would actually be able to kidnap the sleeper and create an Umbral Shadow. The Umbral Shadows always appear on your home system, and they have the same stats as Umbral Choir, with the exception that their FIDSI output is doubled. The entire FIDSI output, food, industry, everything, making them incredible superpopulation. Also, keep in mind that if you want to grow your population fast and to increase the bonuses, you can always activate a boost that will not only increase the growth speed, but also double all the effects. In regards to the Umbral Shadows, which are the Umbral population, the Uber population that I don't have in this particular save file, well, their double FIDSI income actually cannot be doubled even further. So this is the only part where boosting doesn't give you the result you may hope for, but nonetheless it is a good one. So with that in mind, I need to talk a little bit more about the Umbral Shadow, the Umbral Choir home system. As you can see, this is my home system. It is wonderful. You start with just one crescent, which only has one single thing and a maximum of 4 population. But then you can colonize the empty beacons to create more crescents, and then you can terraform them to have even more crescents, increasing not only the amount of population your crescents can have, but also your population output by quite a bit. So you definitely want to grow your crescents. You don't want to grow them too quickly, however, because keep in mind, in order to fill the positions onto your sanctuaries, you actually have to be maxed out with your population on your home system. So this encourages me to talk about the FIDSI now. What do you prioritize as a player? In my opinion, in the early game, Food is by far the most important resource that you can find, because you need to max out your home system as quickly as possible, and then you want to max out all your sanctuaries as quickly as possible. This will be tricky and difficult to do, and at the start of the game your population will grow very slowly. The only way to beat that is to prioritize gaining more food by gaining some of the essential early game technologies. For instance, being able to get a progenitor crop seeding and intensive cultivation logistics as quickly as possible is, in my opinion, recommended. Looking back at my home system, what happens after you exit early game or try to exit early game? Then your most important resource will become industry, because keep in mind, the only system you can ever create anything on is your home system, and you need this queue to be empty at most times, because whenever you need something, you need to be able to create it ASAP, because this is the only place where you can create something. So if things go sour, if anything goes wrong, then you have no plan B. This is why you need to be able to create your plan B for yourself at a moment's notice. This is why you need to have an ungodly amount of industry. What other resource do you really need to watch out for and try to maximize? In my opinion, science. Science is very important for Umbral Choir. You can gain a lot of science very easily, and having a lot of science will give you the technological edge that you will need against other empires, and also it will allow you, of course, to go for the scientific victory. Because your people are somewhat scientific focused, it should be relatively easy. So I would say that by around mid to late game, you want to lower the priority of your food growth and increase the priority of your science growth. So that is very important. In regards to influence and dust, of course, they are always somewhat important, but perhaps not as crucial, so you can, to some degree, ignore it. To some degree. Dust, however, is more powerful and important for you than it would be for other empires. Why is that, you may ask? Well, it's actually very simple, although not immediately possible for me to demonstrate. It is the fact that you treat your sanctuaries as your own systems, even sanctuaries that are made on the enemy system. And if you can recall, you can repair and retrofit your ships on your systems. This includes your sanctuaries, this includes the enemy systems. So let's say you are in the middle of a war and your ships are badly damaged. You cannot normally fix them as any other empire, but if the system you're fighting over has a sanctuary on it, then even if it is the enemy system, you can still repair your ships. Repairing your ships costs a very large amount of dust, but if you have a large amount of dust, then you can infinitely repair your systems while orbiting the enemy home systems. So repairing your fleets while also using them all the time without break and without end will cause your enemy no end of pain. And this is a very powerful strategy. So if you want to maximize dust, you can do that, and this will allow you to be a very powerful and scary warmonger. So if this is your playstyle, then dust suddenly becomes way more important for you than it is right now, as it stands for non-warmongery type of people. So next up, I'll talk a little bit about critical situation of you being at the risk of losing your home system. What happens then? Well, what happens then is quite simple. You can relocate your home system. How do you do that? You create a beacon on a special system, such as a collapsing star system or a solar nebula. And how do you create a beacon? Quite simply by hacking a system. So you just have to target a system and then you can hack it, which is quite as easy as it sounds. Now, a beacon will take several turns to actually finish, but once it is finished, you will be able to relocate. And even before a beacon is finished, you'll still be able to relocate, although you will lose some of your population and improvements. Now, relocating to a beacon is quite costly in terms of the bandwidth that you'll lose out on. So, and it will also destroy all of your other beacons. So this is only a last resort action. Only if you fear that you might lose the game and lose your home system should you use the transmission beacon. And here is why. Whenever you activate it, you lose your other beacons. And every single beacon you create gives you the bonuses of your special systems onto the home system. As you can see, the bonus from a collapsing star is right there. Well, I can show you by moving my mouse because I need to hover over the influence, but you can see it right there. So creating a you want to create as many beacons on those special systems as possible, because they give you a lot of benefits on your home system. It is especially important and useful in the early game. Besides, having a lot of beacons is also useful because if bad times do happen, you have a lot of systems to choose from that you could run away to. Now, the downside of this is that if you look at my bandwidth allocation, your beacons cost a lot of bandwidth. As time goes on, your beacons will start costing less and less bandwidth, but they will always cost some bandwidth, and this will possibly mean that your system and your empire will be more exposed to hacking attempts, and that you will be also less efficient at hacking. Nonetheless, it is still a fun strategy to go for, and I believe this is quite good. I started talking about the early game, so let's keep talking about this. What do you do in early game? In early game, it is essential to expand as quickly and as far away as possible, because you want to create as many sanctuaries for later as possible. So you want to go for the easiest systems to hack, the ones that take very little time to hack, and you want to hack them and you want to create sanctuaries. And then keep going forward as fast as you can, try to reach other empty systems that are near your enemy. And then you'll find yourself in a situation such as the situation on Korana, where I was able to create a sanctuary and then the enemy expanded onto it. The reason why it's so important is because otherwise it can be quite tricky to create a sanctuary on an enemy system. The enemy can trace you, the enemy can stop you, the enemy can find out that you're trying to expand onto their systems, which is quite problematic. Moreover, once you expand to an enemy system, you cannot, once the enemy system has already been colonized, but you have not yet created a sanctuary on it, then you cannot create a sanctuary all that easily. It will take multiple hacking attempts in order to establish a sanctuary on already colonized system. So let's say if I wanted to create a sanctuary on FLAD, or FAD or whatever it's called, I first need to get 2 sleepers on the system, and then I'll have the extra action available to me to create a sanctuary. So I'll need to hack the system thrice in order to create a sanctuary, twice to get 2 sleepers, and the third time to get the sanctuary. And if I create a sanctuary here before the enemy expanded to the system, it would just take a single hack, and then I would be able to create a sanctuary, which would start growing, and then I would simply be able to start transferring my population, turning my population into sleeper agents like this. What do the sleeper agents do for you? I showed on my other video. And the same deal also applies to the Umbral Choir, except you can also, as I mentioned, kidnap your sleeper population and turn them into a very, very powerful population on your home system. Which again can be accelerated even further if you use the abduct technology, or rather battle outcome, after invading the enemy sleeper system where your sleeper agents are already located. So this is much faster than hacking, although obviously you need quite a powerful military in order to achieve that. Which is quite difficult since, as I mentioned, the Umbral Choir has fairly little in the way of manpower most of the time. I was able to get a substantial amount of manpower stocked up, but it's not easy. How do you make it easier? Well, by finding neutral factions. Neutral factions give you a lot of relation rewards if you get them to like you. The most important one being the fact that they will donate manpower to you. So, you want to hack minor factions relatively early in the game, and you want to make them love you. And I do mean love you. So that they give you as much manpower as possible. Then you can hack them even further to increase their manpower yield that they give you. Even further, that will allow you to stockpile a good amount of manpower, which otherwise is very difficult for you to acquire. Now, of course, what happens when you accidentally max out a minor faction? How do you assimilate when you can have no more expansions? Well, it's quite simple. It's the same way as if you were to invade a major faction. When you assimilate a minor faction, the minor faction immediately is killed. Everybody's killed, the systems are raised, and instead you are given a sanctuary on every single planet the minor faction occupies. So if I were to assimilate this minor faction, I would get a sanctuary on this planet, and the minor faction would be instantly destroyed. Not very pacifistic, but hey, who said the Umbral Choir really has to be all pacifistic, right? So those are the most important things and the tips for the early game. Focus on expanding quickly. If possible, grab a few beacons in the early game. Try not to overdo this because beacon cost is quite heavy and you do want to be able to create defensive programs and offensive programs as well. Utilize minor factions. You want to at least have one minor faction stay as your friend for as long as possible. But do wipe them out before anybody else can assimilate them. That's quite important. Finally, what happens when you actually do go to war, and when do you want to go to war? In my opinion, until the middle game, there's no reason to create any ships of any kind. As you can see, I have never researched the small class of defensive ships, and I have pitifully small military. Those are all the ships I currently have. Very little considering we're on turn 50 on fast speed, but I never needed to create a military. And because military is an expense for you to have, If there is no need to create a military, you better not create it. You only want to create a military once you feel threatened, once you feel like another empire might expose you, discover where your home system is, or if you believe that you want to go for a more militaristic type of victory type, which still will not happen until around mid-game, so only after you are a few dozen turns in, you may want to consider making a military fleet, and not before that, because there would just be no point. You are stealthed, you're cloaked, the only faction in the early game that can find you are the pirates, and they'll for the most part just leave you alone anyway, so this is fine. You don't have anything to worry about, unless somebody is really a smart multiplayer player and is rushing to get you as soon as possible. So that's my opinion on when you should start making your military. Now, in regards to what ships you want and what your ships can do, in my opinion, the Umbral Choir ships are actually kind of like a Swiss Army knife. And when it comes to creating your fleet, I believe that for the Umbral Choir it is essential to have many fleet designs, ship designs, and every ship should be specialized to do one particular thing super well. And the reason for that is even on your most offensive type of ships, the ones that are meant to do damage, you have a very large amount of support modules. As you can see, on this ship I could have up to 5 support modules. Of course, some of them I'm using as defensive and offensive modules instead, but even there, this is an unupgraded basic ship that can have 3 support modules, and you can increase it even further. And all your ships can have a lot of defensive, or rather support modules. So in my opinion, it is a very good idea to grab things such as vacuum protection, which give you access to a lot of support modules, and to look for support modules in other areas, like for instance basic flotilla shields, and so on and so forth. You of course want to get the ambusher module as quickly as possible, and you want to have an ambusher ship in every fleet you have, because this will allow you to better utilize your cloaking potential, because you don't even have to install cloaking modules on your ships otherwise. It's just a empire-wise improvement that you can keep investing in to make yourself undetectable. You just want to have the ambusher module to make your ships even more powerful in a battle scenario. Speaking of battle scenarios, how do your ships perform in those scenarios? With the ambusher trait and with a mix of ships that are specialized to do different things, you should do very well. You should be able to fire before the enemy can fire, you should be able to dish out a humongous amount of damage, and you should do quite fine. That being said, the Umbral Choir ships are made out of paper, literal paper, they die super easily, and they don't have the same firepower as other dedicated offensive ships of other empires have. For instance, if you want your Hunter class ship to go toe-to-toe against, let's say, the Riftborn ships, and you expect to win, you'd be horribly wrong. Your strength is in your versatility. Your strength is in getting different ships of different kinds with a lot of extra support modules to work together to one end and to maximize your potential. So, and always try to get a jump on the enemy. Try to cloak, move around your enemy fleets, and attack them only when they're at their weakest. Try to attack their systems to force the enemy fleets to run back home instead of attacking your main system. You always want to divert attention from your home system, otherwise the enemy can snap it relatively easy and destroy it. So, that I believe is everything I needed to tell you about the Umbral Choir and how you should play as them. There are many ways you can achieve victory as the Umbral Choir. They are a very versatile faction that support a variety of playstyles, and their faction quest is also very flexible in terms of what you want to go for. You can specialize your people to be very warmongery or very pacifistic. You have a lot of options, so with that in mind, I believe that Umbral Choir is one of the most fun factions to play as in LSPace 2, if not the most fun to play as, and I never expected to like a faction that only has one system at any given time. They're tricksters, they are very fun, and your enemies will never know the full capabilities of your empire. So you always have to stay one step ahead of the enemy, and then you should be able to win in any kind of scenario. I wish you luck in your adventures. This was Pangolin Advisor, and I'll see you online.